Very happy to welcome in our next guest as we continue our celebration of 75 years of the United Way being in the Fond du Lac area, and now the Fond du Lac County United Way. As we celebrate 75 years, I'd like to welcome in another guest. This is a gentleman, a local gentleman, who has a very unique perspective of the United Way. He hasn't necessarily been involved that much himself, but his history is just entwined with the United Way's history. Would you please introduce yourself and maybe give us a little brief insight into what that history is?
Sure. I'm Scott Rodman, and my unique perspective is that my father was the executive director of United Way quite a few years ago, 1967 until 1976, 9 years. So he retired from the JCPenney company. Actually, that was a lie, because right after that, he started working for United Way. So he was there for 9 years, and I remember that period.
You started learning about the importance of giving, the importance of volunteering, the importance of caring for others, way from your father, way before he was ever involved in United Way, correct?
Right. You know, I can't remember any come to Jesus talks with my dad, but I learned from him by example. And he was a manager of Penny's, and I could see there are times that he could have fired people, but he didn't. And I think he was really concerned that people, you know, they worked for him and he worked with them, regardless. So I remember from a very early age, when maybe I was 11 or 12 years old, we lived at 114 East 2nd Street, which is now the men's shelter. And he was at the door with someone, and I happened to be there, and it was the postman. He'd been fired. He did something wrong. And I could see that my dad gave him some money. So after that happened, I said, what did you do? And he said, well, he gave him some money. And I said, but he was fired. He did something wrong. And I said, why did you do that? And he said, because he has to eat. So, you know, this is like 60 or 70 years ago that this story came to me. And I remember it now because it had such an impact on me, because I was so confused. Because at that time, you know, as a young kid, we're thinking, you do something wrong, you pay for it, you know, there's some consequence. So it sticks with me, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's what we have to do.
Can you talk a little bit about this thing you told me? You said being a volunteer is an attitude. I just love that. Explain, if you will.
Well, I think it's an attitude. I think it takes empathy, takes curiosity, and you have to have some kind of impetus that says, I'm going to help somebody else. I'm going to do something, even from people you might not know. But there's so many opportunities for that. And I think almost anybody, unless you're restricted by physical abilities or something like that, there's something you can do. You can do the literacy project. You can do help the homeless. You can do food. I was very involved during COVID in food distribution. So I'm very proud of that. And I look at people and I think I try to go back to my dad, you know, and his attitudes, and I've tried to keep that alive.
That doesn't only make a difference in your community, but that makes a difference perhaps generationally, as you are an example of, I would guess.
Right. And we have to remember that it's like dropping a stone in the pond. You do something and you think, oh, well, you know, that's not very much, but everything has an influence. Even if we don't see it and we don't know. It has an influence on us to do it, you know, when we're sharing with other people. Especially with the food distribution, when I was working on that, you know, they say, break bread together. And I thought about that, and I thought, when I manage to get food distributed to other people, I feel like I'm breaking bread with them. I feel like it's a spiritual thing. And that's part of my motivation. I love it.
Anything you want to say to United Way for 75 years?
Congratulations. You've done a great job, and it's really wonderful.